Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Adobe. It is time for another update. Also, an update was requested by one of the followers, so I wanted to let you know that anyone can make these requests and I will most likely cover them, especially if there is an actionable trade setup to follow. Now on this chart we are tracking a pretty simple impulse forming to the upside, where we have basically a series of 1-2 setups that have formed in this area, and this would be the actual wave 3. Yeah, this is the core wave 3, where from now on we are still looking at third waves to be formed to the upside overall, but we are only looking to form 4-5 patterns to actually complete the larger wave 3. Now in that case, we are still looking at quite impulsive and strong movements to the upside, and this will remain the case as long as we hold here the area of support for the wave 4 between the $314 all the way down to the $126 level at the 50% retracement. If we actually break here the 50% retracement, well, it would have significantly bearish implications, and we might not even look for additional highs afterwards, especially not in a favored scenario. Now, with that said, we are still right now at the top of the area of support, and it is rather likely than not that this movement, this pattern to the upside, will work out eventually. And if we are to consider this pattern, this what has formed since the wave 3 top, well, it is rather preferred that we are going to get an additional low. Yeah, we are also able to even consider this initial movement to the downside an A wave down within an impulse. Yeah, we are tracking this as a 5-wave move to the downside in any case. And then to the upside, we only managed to create a 3-wave pattern. So it is rather preferred, and has been always rather preferred, that we form here another 5-wave move down to actually have a full wave 4. And in this correction, we might be further ahead than you may notice, than you may think necessarily, but I have to say it is quite possible that we form here a low relatively soon. Now, we have been tracking even the idea for a 5th wave to have already started and to have a bottom here in the wave 4 in the orange scenario. And even though it wasn't necessarily too likely, because yeah, again, 3-wave structure to the upside, if we had a 5-wave pattern, it would have been a much higher probability for this to be a 1-2 setup and to work out. But besides the fact that we only had a 3-wave pattern, right now, in the last couple of weeks, we have actually even broken below the area of support. Yeah, it is becoming quite a sustained break, and we don't seem to have a high likelihood of still getting back into it in time to consider this just a brief break, which gets me to the point that, yeah, I have to say technically it is still possible that this 1-2 setup could still work out. Technically it would only be invalidated by breaking here below the beginning of the wave 1, forming a new low, which is around the $275 level, but the probabilities are not there, and it is already at a point where even if we don't form an additional low within this area and we form a higher low, in fact, I might still prefer a different interpretation for the overall correction in the wave 4. I might prefer an ABCDE triangle to have formed in the end, and consider this overall wave 4 a triangle and look for a 5th wave from this area. Yeah, even if we don't form a new low, I would probably still not prefer the orange interpretation anymore. It might still work out, it might still be relevant, but I don't believe it is relevant enough for us to still be tracking this idea. Now, in this case, I do still heavily prefer that we form another low within the wave 4, and if I were to be looking at this ABC structure to the downside, I could even consider an ideal target here at the 100% extension for the wave C, the 100% extension of the wave A, which is around the $250 level. But within this structure, I would highly expect to form a 5-wave move to the downside, and yeah, it would be a wave C in that case. Now, within this pattern that has already formed to the downside, I am actually able to even consider it an impulse at this point. Yeah, we can even allow only the 50% retracement to be tracked at this point, but I don't necessarily believe we will necessarily return into this area of support within the wave 4. I do have a couple of points, however. I am not too convinced that this third wave has already bottomed, because this wave 4 was rather small, yeah, much smaller in comparison with this wave 2, which is technically okay. Yeah, we could have already topped in the wave 4 and we could be in the 5th wave to the downside, which is why I was saying we might be further ahead than you think. But I am at least mentally prepared to see this movement to the downside, this push lower, as an extension of this wave 3. In that case, we should be watching out for quite significant extensions to the downside in the wave C. Yeah, we might extend to quite significant lows within the overall wave 4, which isn't necessarily a problem. Yeah, we still have a lot of room in the area of support, and we even have quite significant areas, or not areas, structural support levels here. Yeah, we formed this week to the downside, which is significant to me. Around the $255 level, we could see a bottoming area forming in that region, as well as even lower here around the $207 level, where we have formed the bottom before extending into the fifth wave, into this next movement, larger movement to the upside. Now, in that case, we can move here into the shorter time frame, where in this fifth wave to the downside, well, I would expect at this point, if this fifth wave has already started, to form a 5-wave move to the downside. Yeah, that is not even a problem. Within this structure, I could argue that this is a 1, 2, 3rd, 4th, and a 5th within a wave 1 of the 5th wave down. So we can actually even go ahead and label this, yeah, a 1, 2, 3rd, 4th, and the 5th to be forming overall. And this would be within the idea that we are tracking an overall impulse within the wave C in yellow. It isn't necessarily the case. Once again, I could argue that this movement to the downside is developing within a diagonal pattern, but that might be even more applicable if this is developing within a 3rd wave down. But for now, we can focus mostly on this smaller time frame, where the momentum still seems to be increasing to the downside. Yeah, even here we haven't even managed to break here in this wave 2 above the top that we formed here in this internal wave 4, which is actually a sign of quite high weakness. We have formed here a lower low instead, and the momentum to the downside actually is increasing. So I am watching out within this wave 3 a possible extension, a 1, 2, 1, 2 setup, where yeah, this movement could accelerate quite seriously to the downside at any point now, and rightfully so. Yeah, we are expecting within this pattern a 3rd wave down, in which case I would be looking for an ideal target for wave 3 at the $255 level, the 138.2% extension, which seems to be perfectly in line with these structural support levels. Yeah, it is very, very much in line with those levels. Now, even if we actually get there within the wave 3, we would expect still further extensions. We would still need a few, actually an additional wave 4 and a 5th wave down. Yeah, we don't actually need more than that afterwards, but we are prepared for this idea right now, okay? I will be leaving for now on the chart this larger area of resistance for the wave 4 in case we get a reset. It is however not a preferred scenario for me. I would have liked this wave 4 if it started to have already started. Yeah, maybe if we formed something like an ABC here directly, it might have worked out, but we have already pushed this deep within the next move to the downside and then get back into the area of support. It would extend it even outside of the proportions that we may have here for the wave 2 available, right? And in that case, yeah, my preferred interpretation is that we head in this direction to the downside already and finish the larger correction in the wave 4 in white. And once we complete it, once again, we are looking for new all-time highs. Now, for me, a signal that this pattern to the downside is not going to extend directly too impulsively would be here a break above this possible 1-2 setup. Yeah, if I see especially a break above the $340 level, that would be an invalidation point for me, where I would not be able to consider this a 1-2 setup anymore. But as long as we hold here below the relevant areas of resistance, which is for a wave 2 between the $322 level all the way up to the $334 level, I am looking with a high risk assumption of a 3rd wave unfolding directly in this area. Yeah, so far into these levels, we have pushed into the 50% retracement, we have gotten rejected, and it seems we are attempting to go back in. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we push back into the area of resistance, but I would need to see a break above the $334 level for a signal that this structure is not going to be the impulsive movement to the downside that I necessarily foresee right now. Again, it is more of a hunch. It isn't necessarily confirmed that we should see a very, very strong movement to the downside, but based on the interpretations that I assume here on the chart that I see, this is probably the preferred scenario. And for now, I don't have a different area of support to provide you. Yeah, I suppose we could be looking here for a very, very tiny area for a possible ABC movement to the upside, but yeah, it is in a very small time frame. Those are quite fragile, and yeah, I suppose we could be tracking this as an ABC pattern for now at least. But yeah, for now, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.